Dependence never begins with chains. It begins with comfort. You have felt it before, even if you never named it. A room where everything appears calm, reasonable, civilized. No raised voices, no explicit orders, just polite tones, soft expectations, and a constant suggestion that things already work well enough. And yet, when you stay too long, something inside you dulls. Your initiative slows. Your thoughts hesitate before forming. You start checking the temperature of the room before trusting your own judgment. This is not oppression in the childish sense. No one is forcing you. That is the point. The most effective control does not rely on fear. Fear is loud. Fear creates resistance. Fear wakes people up eventually. Invisible control does the opposite. It sedates. It trains the nervous system to associate autonomy with discomfort and dependence with relief. Over time, the body learns the lesson faster than the mind ever could. Most people misunderstand power because they look for aggression. They expect domination to announce itself. They think control must shout, but real power whispers. It arranges the environment so that choosing for yourself feels slightly risky, slightly awkward, slightly exhausting. Not enough to revolt, just enough to comply. Look at how this plays out socially. In groups, the person who holds the most power is rarely the most assertive. It is often the one who defines what is reasonable, the one who decides what is too much, what is overreacting, what is unnecessary. Once those boundaries are set, everyone else begins to police themselves. No enforcement is required. The system runs on internalized restraint. The moment you start explaining yourself too much, you have already entered their frame. Dependence is cultivated through permission structures. You are praised for initiative, but only when it aligns. You are encouraged to speak, but only within a narrow emotional bandwidth. You are told you are free, while constantly receiving subtle feedback about which expressions are rewarded and which are quietly punished. Over time, your behavior adapts, not consciously, biologically. This is how environments domesticate people. The body learns first, the slight tension before speaking, the micro delay before acting, the instinct to check reactions before trusting your own perception. Cortisol rises not because of danger, but because of ambiguity. You are never quite sure where the invisible line is, only that crossing it produces social friction. So you avoid it. You shrink your range of motion, and you call this maturity. In relationships, the pattern becomes even more intimate. Control does not arrive as restriction. It arrives as care, as concern, as I just want what's best for you. Over time, decisions that once felt personal become collaborative, then negotiated, then subtly pre-approved. You stop making choices alone, not because you are forbidden, but because the emotional cost of unilateral action has been quietly inflated. You confuse harmony with health. The invisible error most people make is assuming that intention is what matters. They ask, are they trying to control me? This is the wrong question. Control does not require malicious intent. It only requires a structure that rewards dependence and penalizes sovereignty. Systems don't need villains. They need incentives. Once dependence is normalized, people begin to defend it themselves. They rationalize their own shrinking. They label autonomy as selfish, silence as wisdom, passivity as emotional intelligence. They learn to mistrust the part of themselves that wants to move first, decide first, act without consensus. This is where the real damage occurs. Because the longer you live inside invisible control, the more foreign your own authority begins to feel. Acting without approval triggers guilt. Speaking plainly feels aggressive. Wanting more feels immature. The environment has succeeded not by breaking you, but by reshaping your internal compass. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people prefer this. Dependence removes the burden of authorship. If something fails, it wasn't really your call. If something succeeds, it was a team effort. Responsibility dissolves into shared language. No one stands alone. No one risks being fully seen. Safety replaces aliveness and is mistaken for peace. The narrator observing this does not need to raise his voice. He does not need to accuse. He simply notices patterns. Who hesitates, who seeks approval, who apologizes before speaking, who over-explains. These are not personality traits. They are adaptive responses to invisible pressure. The tragedy is not that people are controlled. It is that they learn to control themselves on behalf of the system. Once this frame locks in, Overt domination becomes unnecessary. You will enforce the rules for free. You will self-correct before anyone else has to. You will experience obedience as choice and call it freedom. And if someone points this out, your first reaction will be irritation. Not because they are wrong, but because something in you recognizes the cost of seeing clearly. Awareness threatens the comfort you have built your life around. This is the moment where most people turn away, because noticing the architecture means facing the part of you that participated willingly, the part that traded autonomy for acceptance, the part that learned to stay small not because it was told to, but because it was rewarded for it. This is where the real conversation begins, but only if you are willing to stay with the discomfort long enough to see it. The inversion begins when you stop asking who has power and start observing who needs a reaction. Most people misread social conflict because they think the loudest person is winning. They think the one making accusations, setting emotional fires, or demanding explanations is in control. This is backwards. The one who needs movement from the other side is already dependent. The one who can remain still is operating from a different tier entirely. Invisible control collapses the moment you withdraw participation from the script. This is not silence as avoidance. Avoidance is anxious. It leaks. This is silence as posture, a refusal to be recruited into emotional labor you did not agree to perform. When someone provokes and you do not rush to clarify, defend, or soothe, something destabilizing happens. The expected rhythm breaks. The system pauses. You have not attacked. You have not resisted. You have simply declined to validate the frame. Watch what follows. The aggressor often escalates, not because you are wrong, but because the strategy has failed. Accusations become vaguer. Tone sharpens. The mask slips just enough to reveal urgency. This is the tell. Power never rushes. Only dependence does. There is a reason silence has been pathologized in modern discourse. It disrupts leverage. A person who does not react cannot be steered easily. They cannot be guilted on schedule. They cannot be guided through emotional pressure points with precision. They become unpredictable, and unpredictability terrifies systems built on compliance. But here is the crucial distinction most people miss. Non-reaction is not passivity. Passivity is frozen fear. Non-reaction is choice. It is the internal decision to let the other person expose their own position without interference. You are not withholding to punish. You are observing to understand. This subtlety changes everything. In environments of invisible control, reactivity is currency. Whoever reacts first loses altitude. Whoever explains is already conceding ground. Explanations are rarely requested by truth. They are requested by dominant structures that want you in the defensive posture, justifying your existence instead of inhabiting it. This is why certain conversations feel exhausting even when nothing overtly hostile is said. The fatigue does not come from conflict. It comes from asymmetry. One side speaks from assumption. The other speaks from defense. One defines reality. The other negotiates their right to exist within it. The inversion happens when you stop correcting false premises. Consider the moment someone says, calmly, "You seem upset." The untrained response is denial or clarification. "I'm not upset. I just..." Notice how fast you are pulled into their framing. You are now responding to a diagnosis you did not consent to. The content no longer matters. The hierarchy has already been established. A different posture does not argue the claim. It does not accept it either. It simply does not move toward it. A pause, a neutral acknowledgement, or nothing at all. The absence of engagement forces the other person to either escalate openly or retreat. Both outcomes reveal more than any explanation ever could. This is not manipulation. It is self-containment. The deeper truth is that invisible control depends on your eagerness to be understood. The need to be seen as good, reasonable, cooperative. That need is the access point. When it disappears, the system loses its grip. People who hold real internal power are often misread as cold. In reality, they are economical. They do not spend energy proving things that do not require proof. They do not chase agreement. They do not confuse emotional transparency with obligation. Notice how quickly people label this as arrogance. That accusation itself is diagnostic. It is the sound of a system encountering someone it cannot easily regulate. Another inversion occurs around agreement. Most assume that disagreement is the tool of strength. In truth, strategic agreement can be far more destabilizing. Not agreement as submission, but agreement as removal of friction. When you stop resisting the narrative and simply let it exist without investing in it, the tension collapses. There is nothing left to push against. Sure, I hear that. Okay. These are not concessions, they are exits. What follows is often confusion, sometimes anger, sometimes an awkward attempt to reassert importance. Because without your resistance, the other person is left alone with their own energy. Many cannot tolerate this. They need opposition to feel real. This is where the illusion of victim and aggressor flips. The one demanding engagement reveals their reliance on your participation. The one standing still becomes opaque, unreadable, sovereign. But this posture requires something most people avoid: the willingness to be misinterpreted. Invisible control trains you to fear misunderstanding more than loss of self. It teaches you that being liked is safer than being intact. Breaking this spell means allowing others to hold incorrect versions of you without rushing to fix them. It means letting silence do the work that explanations never could. There is a physiological shift that accompanies this. When you stop reacting, your body initially protests. The impulse to speak, to clarify, to soothe will spike. This is conditioning unwinding. The nervous system has been trained to associate stillness with danger. Staying put feels wrong before it feels powerful. If you endure that moment, something recalibrates. You realize that nothing catastrophic happens. The world does not collapse. The relationship either adjusts or reveals its true nature. Both outcomes are information. Both are useful. This is why invisible control fails against people who are internally organized. Not aggressive, not dominant, organized. Their actions come from a coherent center rather than a need for approval. They do not need to win exchanges because they are not fighting for position. They already occupy their own. The system senses this and responds in predictable ways. It may attempt to shame, to provoke, to frame you as difficult, distant, or selfish. These labels are not diagnoses. They are pressure tactics. Their purpose is not truth, but compliance. Once you see this, the game loses its hypnotic quality. You stop asking, how do I handle them? You start asking, why would I participate at all? This is the real inversion. You are no longer managing interactions. You are managing access. Not everyone deserves your explanation. Not every emotional bid deserves a response. Not every tension needs resolution. Control dissolves when you stop feeding it. And what remains, after the noise fades, is a quieter question. Not about tactics, not about others, but about your own identity. Who are you when you are not reacting? Who are you when no one is pulling your strings? Who are you when silence is not a threat, but a home? That question is where power stops being a strategy and starts becoming something else entirely. Power becomes dangerous only when it remains external. The final inversion is internal. Most people never escape invisible control because they try to replace one system with another. They abandon submission only to adopt performance. They trade obedience for posture. They learn to look unbothered while still being governed by the same need, to be perceived correctly. This is not sovereignty, it is camouflage. Real autonomy begins when you stop needing the world to confirm your internal state. This is where the conversation deepens and where cheap, dark psychology collapses. Because the final layer has nothing to do with tactics, silence, or social positioning. Those are tools, useful, but temporary. The deeper question is why certain pressures work on you at all. Why some accusations land. Why some misunderstandings itch. Why certain people can pull reactions out of you with surgical precision. The answer is not confidence. Confidence is cosmetic. The answer is shadow. Every system of invisible control feeds on the parts of you that you have not integrated. The disowned impulses, the unclaimed desires, the guilt you carry for wanting more than you were permitted to want. When someone accuses you of being selfish, cold, arrogant, or difficult, the sting only exists if some part of you secretly fears it might be true. Secure people are not calm because they are virtuous. They are calm because there is nothing left to defend. This is why explanations feel compulsive. They are attempts to purify the image, to distance yourself from your own shadow, to prove, to others and to yourself, that you are not what you fear you might be. Invisible control exploits this relentlessly. It presses exactly where identity is unresolved. The moment you accept your capacity for selfishness, the accusation loses its power. The moment you accept your capacity for coldness, warmth stops being a performance. The moment you accept your capacity for dominance, you stop needing to display it. Integration neutralizes leverage. This is the difference between the child, the adult, and the sovereign. The child reacts because reaction is survival. Approval equals safety. Disapproval equals threat. The nervous system is wired for dependence, and control feels personal. Every look matters. Every tone carries weight. The adult learns regulation. They manage impulses. They negotiate. They adapt. This is progress, but it is still relational. The adult self is shaped by context. It is competent, but not free. It still asks quietly, "Am I allowed?" The sovereign does not ask. Not because they are rebellious, but because the question itself has dissolved. The sovereign does not need permission to exist as they are. They have already confronted their shadow and found nothing there that requires denial. When accusations come, they are evaluated, not absorbed. When pressure appears, it is noticed, not internalized. This is why certain people seem unreachable, not emotionally distant, but structurally intact. They are not guarded, they are whole. There is no split between who they are privately and who they are publicly. No performance gap. No moral debt waiting to be collected. Invisible control has no entry point here. Notice how this reframes silence. Silence is no longer a technique, it is a byproduct. When you are internally aligned, you do not rush to fill space. When you are not managing an image, you do not fear gaps in understanding. When you are not seeking validation, misinterpretation is inconvenient at worst, irrelevant at best. This also reframes desire. Systems of control often weaponize morality to suppress desire. They teach you to associate wanting with danger, neediness, or immaturity. You are rewarded for restraint, praised for self-sacrifice, admired for being low maintenance. Over time, desire itself feels suspect. You learn to downplay it, negotiate it, apologize for it. This is another leash. The sovereign relationship to desire is neither indulgent nor repressive. It is honest. Desire is acknowledged without theatrics, acted on without justification, declined without resentment. This clarity is destabilizing to systems built on guilt and obligation. You cannot control someone who does not feel ashamed of wanting. This does not mean acting on every impulse. It means not lying to yourself about them. Shadow integration is not about becoming darker. It is about becoming real. When the darker impulses are seen, named, and owned, they stop leaking out sideways through defensiveness, projection, or covert power games. The irony is that true self-mastery looks unimpressive from the outside. There is no constant assertion, no dominance display, no moral sermon, just a quiet refusal to be internally moved by external noise. People mistake this for indifference. It is not. It is precision. Energy is conserved for what matters, not wasted on maintaining position. This is why people secure in themselves rarely argue about identity. They do not debate who they are. They live it. And because they are not invested in convincing others, they are paradoxically more convincing. The final collapse of invisible control happens when you realize this. No one can make you dependent without your cooperation. Not consciously, not intentionally, but structurally. Dependence is always an agreement at some level. An agreement to outsource authority, to trade authorship for comfort, to let the environment define you because it feels safer than defining yourself. Breaking that agreement does not require rebellion. It requires ownership. Ownership of your reactions, ownership of your silence, ownership of your desire, ownership of the parts of you that were once disallowed. When this ownership settles, behavior changes without effort. You speak less but more precisely. You engage selectively. You no longer feel compelled to correct every distortion or soothe every tension. Relationships either recalibrate around your center or dissolve. Both outcomes are clean. And here is the final, quiet challenge. For the next few days, notice where you feel the urge to explain yourself when no explanation is required. Notice where you soften your truth to manage reactions. Notice where silence feels threatening instead of neutral. Do nothing dramatic, just observe. That observation alone begins the reorganization. If this resonates with the part of you that is tired of managing perception, you already know what to do.